When I think of Valentine's Day and love, I think of Representative John Persell, who is joining us right now, Democrat of the Day from the great city of Bemidji. He's kind enough today to talk about his term in the House as well as his reelection campaign. Representative, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Good. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And by the way, we should remind everyone, you pulled off a pretty big upset there and taking, I believe it's 5A, correct?
Correct.
How many votes did you win by?
Well, the original tally was 8, and I gained 3 in the recount, so 11 altogether.
Woo! All right.
and I'm gonna more than double that here in 2020. So.
Well, we can only hope. I think you will, because you are one of my favorite politicians. I am very glad that you have the time to join us today. Talk about the last year you've had in the House. I mean, how has it been? Obviously, a little bit of a contentious election battle. You get in there. You are a Democrat from a relatively red district. Talk about how things have gone from your perspective in the Minnesota House.
Well, I believe that, all things considered, that we did a good job, and it took all of us, the House and the Senate and the governor, to make it happen. But we did a good job for Minnesota. Could have done more, and we're trying to do more now. And in this part of our 2020 session, and so. Yeah, I felt pretty good about being back there, number one, being back in the House, and being named chair of Environment Policy Committee in the House. That was a high honor, is a high honor for me. I thank Speaker Hortman for that. And so we're moving ahead with a lot of good things, and I'd say in 2019, the thing that stands out for me is that we were able to maintain health care for all Minnesotans, and that's an ongoing challenge, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
It takes some funding to do that, but that's I'm one of those who believes that health care is a right. If we look through a lens of humanity, it's a right, and we have to make sure that folks that need health care have access to it. I tell you, I'm a disabled Vietnam vet, and I have the VA for my health care. That's government health care. It's pretty good health care. So, when folks say, well, the government can't do this, can't do that, well, the government does some things pretty good, and VA health care is one of them.
And by the way, thank you for your service. I'm U.S. Army, Gulf 1. So I thank you.
You too, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure. I think one of the things, is it safe to say, I think Republicans are terrified of health care during election year cycles. So the fact that you guys were able to keep the Republicans at bay last year with health care, pretty much, I don't think they know it would be political suicide for them to go out there and talk about cutting health care in 2020 during an election cycle, correct?
I agree with that, yes.
All right. I think so. Once again, I think putting that in perspective, the fact that you guys held the line, were able to keep health care in 2019 is good. I also want to jump back really quick to the fact that you're the chair of the Environmental Committee. I think it's wonderful. Minneapolis, St. Paul, there's a lot of people that are environmentally conscious down here, but I think it is vitally important that the people that are, as the DFL goes, that are in charge of some of these committees are people that are on that front line of the environmental fight. And where you're coming from out of your district in 5A, you're talking about not only do you see the wilderness that you're trying to preserve, you also have, unfortunately, you do see cases where the environment has been abused, and you can see the damage that gets done if we're not careful with this. Talk about that, your perspective as being an outstate DFLer running that committee in the House.
Well, the environmental degradation knows no boundaries, and certainly there are water quality issues in all parts of our state, and we have to be diligent in ensuring that we're preventing as much environmental degradation as we can, and that's an ongoing challenge. I mean, atmospheric deposition, as you know, that's where we get most of the mercury that makes our 20-inch walleyes inedible safely for women of childbearing age and children. And I think that there isn't anything that troubles me more than that fact that we've got mercury in our fish, and it's still coming to us. and it's a bigger issue than just Minnesota, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, and we've got our share of Superfund sites, if you will, over on Leech Lake Reservation, little town of Castle Lake. There's one of the worst Superfund sites in the country, let alone Minnesota. It's a what I call an Agent Orange Superfund site, and I say that because of my Vietnam vet experience. But it got dioxin, which is that's the bad news chemical in Agent Orange. So we've got our share of those issues. I'll tell you one thing that I'm pushing, and I'm going to have a lot of co-signers, I think, on this bill. It's a bill that is just getting ready to be dropped here, but it's for no net loss of forests in Minnesota, and it's similar to the no net loss of wetlands that the bill that was enacted here, golly, a couple decades ago now, I think. But it's something that we need. If we keep losing forests, we don't have the habitat. So I'm getting support from the forest industry and across the board for this for a bill like this. So, and that's environmental quality protection. The best way to do it is to not lose it. So. Forests are good, roots in the ground.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about the forest industry. When you talk about this, I mean, this is something I've read about in Washington State, Oregon as well, even up in Alaska. The forest industry understands, I mean, there's no value. If you cut it all down and there's nothing to replace it, they're going to go out of business. So they themselves, a lot of these forest industry people, that there's a concerted effort for them to basically make sure that they have a product, which means basically sustainable forestry.
Correct. And in the same vein as we're now learning and flashing back to the 50s and 60s when I was still on the farm as a kid, and we know how to farm without chemicals. Now we're seeing sustainable agriculture coming back, and one of my favorite quotes that I heard, and it was in a Star Trib article here a month or two ago about a farmer doing regenerative ag, and he said, "I knew I was doing something right when I had earthworms again." It's simple. This isn't rocket science. So so there's a lot of good things, and relearning some of the old ways, if you will, are important to us.
Oh, absolutely, and I think you just nailed it on the head. John Persell joining us. He's Democrat of the Day for today from 5A up in the Bemidji area. I want to talk as well about broadband. This is something that you and I talked about in 2018. Republicans, even though they promised it for 20 years, they're not going to come through on this. They're expecting private industry to fund this, and as well as I do, private industry, they might go into the specific towns, especially a larger town like Bemidji, but out of the community, they're not going to put up a lot of time and effort to put up broadband out in these regions. And we need to have broadband, not only for economic development, but education, medical uses. This broadband, we need to have it from Lake of the Woods all the way down to Albert Lee at this point. You bet.
And there's another bill this year. Every year that I've been in the legislature, I recall having bills for expanding broadband, and we just have to keep taking a chunk at a time, because that's all we can get it seems like is a small chunk at a time. And but I predict we'll make progress on that. The value, as you indicated, and I believe the value is being more and more realized, particularly by those who want to help keep our small town entrepreneurs and keep our small towns. If we lose the entrepreneurs in our small towns, the businesses, then there goes the town in a lot of cases. So I think there's a bigger recognition now across the board politically that we need this broadband out throughout Minnesota, like you say.
John, I want to ask you, and I hope you don't mind me asking. This is not necessarily to do with you, but up in your county there, they made that vote to even though it wasn't really an issue, there wasn't any resettlement of refugees going to be happening in Beltrami County. The county there voted to prevent this from happening. I'd like to get your thoughts on this and what you think is the important thing to do for individual counties.
Well, let me say that from what I understand, and I've read some articles on it, I was not at the meeting, or even I was made aware of the meeting that you're talking about. Some couple days later, I actually was out of state there for a couple days, but the issue, as can happen, it was, and you may know this, it was blown completely out of proportion by folks that just wanted to. It was, if you'll permit me, it was the idiocy of Donald Trump that prevailed in that, because they were saying, oh, well, there's all these refugees that are coming to Beltrami County. Nothing's further from the truth. It was a big lie, but it was put out on social media, and that's what got everybody fired up. I don't know who's responsible for all of the negative, untruthful statements that were put out there, most of them on social media. But that's what it was about, and it just goes to show you can incite people to do some pretty silly things if you use a lot of untrue information. And you know as well as I do, we're living that day to day here with the current occupant of the White House. So it's something that's gonna be in all of our 2020 campaign for sure.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more. And this is the thing, that the biggest fight that we have ahead of us is the fight against ignorance. And because, frankly, there's a lot of people on one side of the aisle here that want people to not exactly know what's going on. As you talk about like Superfund sites in Cass Lake, or the need for broadband outside, they don't want people being aware of these issues, because if they don't realize what the DFL is trying to do and trying to help people and trying to make life better for people, then basically they might have a chance. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's fighting the ignorance has got to be the biggest fight that we have ahead of us in 2020.
Yep. And we're going to do it, and we're going to prevail.
All right. John Persell, it's 5A. We desperately want to keep him in the Minnesota House. So here's what I want you to do. If you can, go up to beautiful Bemidji, door knock. Basically, you can make some phone calls for him, make a donation. JohnPersell.com. That's JohnPersell.com. It's 5A. It's Bemidji. It is a DFL seat, and we want to hold that seat in 2020. Representative, an absolute privilege having you back on the air. Anytime you want to come back, it's by my show is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. You're very kind, and we'll work hard in 2020 and get her done. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative John Persell, 5A, Democrat of the Day. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.